my sister somewhere in the world. Someday, we're gonna meet again.
Keep your head held high, just like Mom taught us.
This time I'll be free from you and then turn to creation.
I'd die before I let that happen.
Good. That's just the going away present I've been needing.
Hello, Shot Deck. I'm in Australia, so if you hear kookaburras, you'll know why. It's not just some crazy bird in my background. And today we have an awesome Shot Talk for the new color purple, which comes out Christmas. And we have with us, incredibly, the director Blitz Bazawule and DP Dan Lawson. I'm fans of both their works. Yeah, and the movie is a real big swing, and it's a musical. It's got music, but it also is a bit of a reimagining of the source material and the 1985 film, and maybe a little bit of the Broadway. Let's just get into it right there, and talk to you, Blitz, about. Yeah, do you describe it as a bit of a reimagining? Does it have any influences from the Broadway play? It's really a complex film in terms of tone and all that. So tell me, when you describe it, how do you talk about it?
Well, when I talk about it, I'm often talking about it as a reimagination, right? I think that each iteration, starting of course with Alice Walker's brilliant Pulitzer Prize-winning book, to Steven Spielberg's cinematic classic, and then of course the Tony Award-winning Broadway play, are all kind of independent individual entities. And our job was to kind of go back to the source material and figure out, kind of what hadn't been said yet, which is not the easiest when a piece of art has been explored in so many dimensions and ways. But I think that the smart thing we did was approach this as a totally original idea, based on familiar characters, based on familiar themes, storyline, but we approached it as a completely original film.
Yeah, well, you can see that. And were you familiar? I mean, the Broadway play had actually been done twice, right? Once in 2005, and then later in 2015, where it won a Tony for Best Revival. Had you seen any of those versions? Had you seen them when they were? No. So that probably frees you up a little, because you're not influenced even in your sort of deep memories of what that and it's quite different from Spielberg's. And tell me, Dan, first, how did you get involved in the project? And I'll start with Dan. Just besides getting involved with Blitz, was it scary to do a musical? Was it scary to do something like it felt like new ground for you, or maybe I'm wrong? Talk to me a little bit about those.
No, 100% new ground. I've never done a musical before, and I would love to do a musical. So I was like really pleased when Blitz was reaching out to me. Blitz reached out to me and said, do you want to be a part of this movie? And of course, I knew about Spielberg's movie, but I've never seen it. I've seen bits and pieces of that, but I've never seen it. And when I got this, when Blitz talked to me about it, should I see it, should I not see it? And I said, I'm not going to see it, but now I'm going to see it, of course, after we have done it. But I just want to go into the project with Blitz's eyes, to go into 100% open and not having any ideas about the future. And I was just so keen about what Blitz told me about the way he wants to present it. And, he has made a very, very fantastic kind of a storyboard, like animatic for the whole movie. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And that was, of course, a lot of work for him, and a really, really good line for everybody, including myself. But I was very keen to do a musical. I was very scared as well, because in the past, I have not been a big fan of musicals, because I could not figure out when is a drama going on and when is a musical coming on. And I don't have that problem anymore, because I think Blitz did that amazing on this one.
Yeah, I think that's often an obstacle for audiences sometimes. I know exactly what you mean, Dan. And you were nodding your head, Blitz, like you must recognize that as well. Even though you come from a background of music, you're Ghanaian and a musician yourself, and have done narrative pieces, either the ones with the Beyonce, Black is King, and in your own film, the Burial Kojo, which are a bit, I guess, narrative in a looser sense. This is obviously follows a very specific structure, and you have to find your way out of some quite dramatic scenes and some really dark material at times into some choreographed dancing and singing. How did you approach that tonal shift and in your mind and also on set and with your actors?
When you get a job like The Color Purple, it really begins with understanding that the medium itself is quite challenging. Way more musicals fail than they succeed. And I had to watch them all. I had to watch them all to understand why. And I felt very, very quickly, in a similar which Dan was saying, we don't understand how the music lives in the body of the film. There's no rhyme, there's no reason. Somewhere in the script, it just says that music appears, and so music appears out the sky. Like that's kind of what we started to feel very quickly when we started watching these musicals. I think the ones that did them well, the few had done them incredibly well, had figured out a way in which you could create access points where the environmental sound could work its way into cadence and into music.
Where you going? I need somebody to wash my back.
Once we figured that out as a way in which that could be a conduit into music, we just took it and run. So whether it was guys building a house that we had already established sonics and then you built, or the horses' hoofs of our opening shots that builds up into banjo, into girls playing patty cake.
Hey sister, what you gonna do? Going down by the river, gonna play with you.
Whatever it was, we had always figured out that, and even some of the more complex ones, like a gramophone, like we knew we had to go into this crazy world of this giant gramophone, but we knew that the music could be playing in real life, on a real.
Got about 1 million tingles sneaking on up my spine.
So the audience isn't ever jarred into this, like, wait, music coming out of the sky, right? And when we're not doing that, we're giving the artist an a cappella opening, a vocal performance that leads you into it. Like Seeley's I'm Here at the end. It starts, in a very stripped down version. Then it kind of builds into this.
Now there's something about good loving that all you ladies should know.
So we learned very early that was the way that we were going to achieve this. And then for me, visually, it became about knowing that I was going to be embarking on a journey that was so long and arduous and had so many different departments that I'd never worked with. I'd worked on smaller independent films, and you kind of learn a very quick shorthand. This was my first studio picture. As Dan would say, a major motion picture. A major motion picture. So
it's exactly like the pressure is like
exactly,
you can't hide from this movie.
Dan always
exactly.
reminded me of the word major. It was not a minor motion picture, it was a major motion. So my job was to come in as prepared as possible. And how I do it, I come from the school of Hitchcock, I come from the school of, Ridley Scott, where you kind of go in and as much as possible, show as many people what your intent is, right? And it's not like I never bring storyboards on set. Like that's not my goal. My goal is to make sure that I've sketched enough around my intended shot. And it's really also, of course, I can easily, pay a storyboard artist to do it. But I don't do that either because it's a painful process of sitting my ass down for many hours to figure out a shot. And I have to choose what the frame is going to be because it's going to take me an hour to sketch it. So
you were sketching it yourself?
No, I sketched every frame myself.
Wow.
And I do that because I'm forced to of all the thousands of decisions where the camera can go, I have to pick one when I sketch. And I have to be very economical when I do that. again, these days of digital shooting, you can just keep the camera rolling, and then you're in trouble when you get into the editing room because you've overshot and you don't know what to do. So a lot of what we were doing was, I sketched somewhere upwards of, 1,200 to 1,500 frames of storyboard, which took me almost 3 months to do. But again, the goal there for me was to make sure that I always had a frame that we could all refer to. And it helped production design go, okay, this is what Blitz is thinking. It helped costume to go, all right, well, this is the kind of hat, or this is the kind of dress that Blitz is going for. And then when I do that, I not only sketch that much, I also scan them, and I hired voice artists to come in and read the lines. And I went on YouTube and I found sound effects, and I did this whole thing. And everybody that was hired sat through a 2-hour, 15-minute movie. And, I think it was very helpful because we all knew the intent. And then I knew that I'd hired masters who were going to go way beyond what I could imagine. So my job then is to go, okay, no more. We're no longer going to look at these storyboards. Now you know what I intend. Dan Lawson, I want you to turn this into 100 times more better than I could imagine it. And that's how it became. That's how we got it done.
That's incredible.
Major.
Well, yeah, then And is that like right when you are hired, you're starting that process in a bit when the world is really small and it's basically you and a few other people, and then building, like, because obviously movies take a long time to prep.
Absolutely. No, that's the first thing I do. Like I don't, this is before I even, and again, the reason for me is once you have to be you have to listen to that still small voice first. Because ultimately what happens is that when you get past that, it becomes 100 people's voices. Your studio has a version of the movie that's in their heads. Your line producer has a version of the movie that's in his head. Everybody has a version of the movie in their heads. And you're responsible for your vision that's in your head. And so for me, again, the biggest, most important thing was how could I always make sure that I showed what my goal was and how my intent was to make sure that we always had a reference point, somewhere to begin the conversation.
That's right. And it's a really good guideline for everybody. It's a big help because it's just a really, really good tool to figure out which way we are going.
Well, it's interesting. Let's talk about this opening scene in terms of, obviously, it's how you begin a movie is really important too, Blitz, and maybe Dan, and how you bring music in right from the start, right? In this transition up to the two girls singing on top of this beautiful tree, by the way.
Yeah, this scene was very clearly in the storyboard. We are going to start at this top shot and then coming around him and coming up to the girls. And then we just have to figure out how we did it. And there was we scouted the tree and Blitz found the tree. I think that was one of the first trees.
Yep, one of the first.
Yeah. And then, I knew that that shot could be a little bit tricky to do because like coming from a straight top shot and coming down to see the horse and then coming up to the girls again, it was a little bit tricky and we couldn't figure out how to do that. So we did a test on the back lot on the studio and we figured out how exactly we should do that. And again, I'm a big fan of like testing as much as you can do so everybody is prepared when we are coming to the location.
And what was it? So is it a techno crane? Take me through the technique.
No, it was a techno crane. We was like starting above them, and then we tracking and panning with the crane at the same time. So we can't to stay in the neutral point of him for a long time, just because we didn't want to see his face at all. We just want to see that guy playing on the banjo. That was Blitz's idea, of course. And then we was coming down, and we saw him going away, and then we boomed up to the small girls and pushing into them again. But you see that shot to the left, this one, you see that the sun is coming out there exactly when we see him in a perfect composition. And then the sun is going away and floating out in the shadows again, and we're coming up to the girls. It's
yeah, there you go. In today's world, this is a bit technical for a second, but have you come on board? Like, is this a Libra? Is this a Matrix? Is this like meaning there's such complex tools now in terms of remote heads.
Yeah, that was not a Libra. It was what was it?
This sort of
I think it was a metric. I'm pretty sure it was a metric. And that works really well when you just have to start to shoot straight down.
Another thing of importance was also, when you're working with animals, which is another very unpredictable part. And the other reason, and this is one thing I've learned from Dan, and I'll take it with me wherever I go, as he said, was testing. I mean, between learning the importance of pre-lighting, which was not something that I ever had the privilege as an artist of ever doing. I mean, I learned that from Dan from day one, how much the importance of being prepared, and how you take advantage of your day is based on your preparation. So any opportunity that we got, Dan would suggest that we test something, and that was very helpful. I mean, we tested the height of water that the ladies were going to be dancing in for the creek. We tested. I mean, we became like test maniacs. Whatever chance we got, we'll test something. But this was very important because, again, you don't know how the horse is going to react to the crane, and you cannot go find out on the day, right?
You sure
it's very important that we found out the comfort level of the horse and how low we can get, how close we could get to the horse without it freaking out,
But because we shot the whole movie pretty wide angles, so we wanted to be tied to the horse in the beginning. So, and of course, the first test we did, the horse was very, very nervous because they have that big crane and camera just on top of the rider. Because we have that idea, we want to shoot as wide angles as we could.
And also, I have my principal actor on the horse, which becomes a safety. This was like my first work. So this is safety for Coleman, to make sure Coleman is fine. Coleman is comfortable on the horse. The horse is comfortable with the crane. And again, you cannot go down to Savannah and find out that no one's comfortable, right? And so it was very important. Also, our ladies had to be harnessed to the tree. The young girls had to be harnessed to the tree. So that, these are also things that you have to find out their comfort level, so that when the camera finally finds them, and then the rest is the act of God, man. When those beautiful weeping willows kind of like blow into it's just gorgeous, But again, you get prepared so you can take advantage of the hand of God. It's just what it is.
Yes. Well, I think what you talked about testing is something people don't talk about enough, but it's actually, when I start a project, and maybe Dan, you can speak to this, I take apart the script and there's always a handful, 6, 7 things. I'm like, wait a second, we should test that. I need to figure this out. What were some of those things for you, Dan, right early on the bat that went into a test bucket besides something like this?
For example, this one, but the whole look of the movie, that's, when we started, Blitz and me talked a lot about how the movie should look. We want to have this like very bright light, some bright sunshine coming from outside. And the whole look of that, you want to have big, big black shadows, but still have the highlights on the dark skin tones. So we did a couple of hair and makeup tests. And I don't think a hair and makeup test is a really good test for everybody, because it's not like just the hair and makeup, it's just the look of the movie as well. It's not like, we shot that as a small scene, so everybody was agree about how the movies actually should look like, and it was like very helpful for everybody. And again, we have a very clear idea about, we want to have this like bright sunshine coming in, and that's the reason we shot with a diffusion filter in the camera. But we shot that behind the lens, so we shot a quarter black promise behind the lens all the time to get that blowing out of the highlights, but keeping the black still black.
One of the other things we tested a bit, of course, we have big choreography moments, big dances. So, shout out to our choreographer, Fatima Robinson. She let us in very early. And so, Dan and I will show up and just sit and watch and go, okay, we have to test this. We have to figure out, when you have like, 100 Ashantis on the beach, how do we shoot that? The dancers had to we had to take over these large, just stages on the lot, and we had to bring everybody in, and we had to pretty much we had to do tape outs, tape out, one a very complex moment is when Shugevi comes to town, and you've got dancers floating into buildings, coming out of buildings. I mean, this was very complex camera movement. So we had to take down, and another thing that is very uncommon that I think, again, shout out to Dan for this, was to bring on his camera operator, Tim, very early. Because and Tim told me this day one. He was like, Blitz, I often never even see the set until it's time to shoot. And he goes, I'm operating the camera. I have no idea. I'm not familiar. We brought Tim in early. So Tim was in with rehearsals. He was going around with his phone, mocking up the movements, which I think, again, when you are, it's 3 a.m. and there are 200 dancers in the middle of a street, it has to become second nature that we know exactly where the camera goes, what are the ins and what are the outs. So I will say that was very important.
Yeah, and there's big pre-lights there all the time. So you and me have this. This is the look we are going to have. So we didn't have any discussions when we show up on the day. We were so agree about the look, and we didn't have any kind of surprises and discussions because we have had that on the pre-lights, and that's a huge help.
This whole set, right? This juke joint out in the middle of a dock on the water. We'll play it a couple times because I'm really interested. Yeah. Dan, why don't you start with you in terms of just some of the complexities of this location and this set, because it's gorgeous and it's it's otherworldly. Yeah.
When I came to Savannah to meet Blitz, he got COVID. So I have 2 weeks there without Blitz, so I have to do something and that was the first set I saw. The production designer Paul Asterberg drove me out to this swamp, and that is in the middle of nowhere. It's an amazing swamp. But I was like saying, how are we going to shoot here? It's like there was more or less no roads, like 150, 80 feet high trees around it. And then I got an idea, we have to light everything from far, far away. I'm a big fan of like big cranes far away. So that is going to be 250 feet cranes with Raptors on that remote control. Raptors is a kind of dinos, but that's made out of LAX in Canada. And they have that idea about, because Blitz and me talked about the color palette again. We want to have these steel blue nights, and you see the steel blue in the swamp. So, and you can put dichroic filters on those lights, because when you're putting a Dino or a Raptor 250 feet up in the sky, it's very windy up there. So if you put a gel in front of that, it's just blowing away right away. So we made those, or LAX made those dichroic filters through the Raptor, so you can just click them on. It's a very, very handy system. And you can make those dichroic filters in all the colors in the world. But we just like this, like steel blue. So what we have here was, we have one crane, a 250 feet crane behind her, and we have one in front of her, and we have one on the sides. So when we are shooting this way, the one behind us, of course, is off, and then the one behind her is on, and then we have one for the key light on her face, because we are shooting this in the swamp in a small boat on another camera boat with a small technical crane as well. So we was in the middle of the swamp, and we didn't have any chances to bring any lights close to her. And the challenge about this is, like, she has to look amazing in the close-up, and the big wide shot has to look very moody and atmospheric. And I think that was the challenge here. But after we have a lot of discussions with Blitz about how we want to do it and how it should look, we decided to build some roads in the middle of this forest to bring the cranes into the right position. And when you see the opening scene here, that's Blitz, you have to help me here, but this moon is one of the lights. We're shooting straight up to one of the Raptors, and they just put a moon on that.
Well, listen, that's the benefit of and sort of embracing the power of simple VFX that nobody really knows, is when you're like, listen, I can't frame this light out on the lens we're on, so let's turn it into something, or can you erase it for me? I find that has been, I remember reading about Janusz Kaminski saying that on like the Jurassic Park he did with Spielberg or something, being like, oh wait, the VFX guys, oh no, don't worry about that crane, I just erase it. And I was like, oh man, that like opens up the whole possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, no, this scene, I mean, personally, is probably going to be one of our most iconic moments of this film. You know, it
for sure.
You know, it did all the things you needed a moment like this to do, which was the environment itself was character, which is a place that I like to start when I, you know, between storyboarding as my first, you know, knee-jerk reaction to any opportunity, and location scouting. Those are my two first things I do. I before I even think of cast, before I think of anything else, I go, where should these people be? Because once you find the right place, I believe everything starts to stack up. You know, and this swamp was one of those. You know, where you just go, this environment itself feels like a character. So everything you put within it now is just amplified. You know, that red dress is only that red dress because of where we are. You know, you know, and of course, you know, Dan's beautiful atmospheric work around it is what makes it pop. And so those things were very, very important to me, was just making sure that we were very focused on creating iconic moments. Now, the other thing technically to also talk about is the fact that we're shooting both exterior on location and interior, we're on stage, which by the way, nobody can tell, which is again a big testament to Dan. And let me.
By the way, I literally was like, I feel like this is an inside outside location on location.
Sir.
That's that.
Well, we got you. Because,
no, you did it great. I was about to ask that because I said, wait a second, that's seamless there.
We were close to not getting it like this, and because we had very long conversations with our VFX team, who had decided they were going to green screen the whole stage work. Right. And I remember calling Dan, I don't know, this was late at night, and going, this is the day before we shoot. Right. And I go, Dan, I don't have a good feeling about this green screen mess. I go, I think we should do what we've always done, be practical, as both of us love. And this way we're sure that what we're getting in camera matches. And this does not become a 1 year long nightmare of trying to fix the environment on stage. And this was probably one of the best decisions we made. We had to go in, of course, and pre-light, which again is like, for us, that's like religion, which is going in and going, this is what the environment is going to look like. Paul Asterberry did a phenomenal job at the environment outside the windows and doors, bringing in some of those trees. And of course, Dan makes it look like we're literally there, which is truly one of the most incredible feats on this project.
And this, I assume, is where that transition happens, right? So you're
nope, this is location.
Oh, still location,
still
and
location.
Then and then this is now set.
This is set.
You had a big enough piece on location to carry this on. Yeah,
yes.
I see.
Yeah, we have both sides of that.
Oh, very cool.
And what we did on studio, you know, we've just filled it up, put black duvetine up. Paul Asterberg and his team put all the trees in with the lights on, and then we just smoked the crazy out of that, and we let the smoke with 20Ks with steel blue on.
Oh, so interesting. So 20K. So you went to tungsten with steel blue, but outside you were on the dichrotic on the HMIs, or no?
No, those Raptors are still tungsten.
Oh, they're still. I got you.
In my world, you cannot put steel blue on HMI because it's just getting too blue. But you know, that's a matter of taste. But that was not the way we wanted to go. And the reason we did when Raptors there was just too powerful for this.
Of course. That's very cool.
But you know, it was actually Bliss. You know, he said, "Let's do it right. Let's do it for real." You know, do.
And I'll say this too, guys. It helps the actors. You know, like we got to remember there's an emotional connection that is an intangible. When the actor believes that they're in it, And you can always tell. I mean, again, I've seen brilliant green screen acting, so I'm not knocking the whole process, but I'm just saying that when you look at a piece of art and you go, that person believes, and this movie required that, because so much of it was in a world of make believe, that you needed the moments that were believable to be fully believable, right? And I think that's the importance of finding environments that inspire that, whether it was the beach we found or Mister's house. And very interestingly, one of the first conversations I had with Steven Spielberg was about what he'll do differently if he was going to make this movie again. And one of the first things he told me was, oh man, I think we messed up on Mister's house in my film. I picked a house that was too big. It always took up my frame. It didn't feel organic to the character. And he kind of, so I remember, I mean, that finding that house, with Paul, I mean, I remember just going, this is it. This is exactly what Steven was talking about, where the house almost feels like a citadel. It's not too big. It becomes, and Dan, we always talk, it becomes almost a jail for Celie, where she cannot escape. So that every time she leaves with Suge Avery, felt like she was breaking out of something, of somewhere, and so having this large swath of land, and then this house that sat on a hill, but there was nothing, there was no other house anywhere, 200, feet near this house, gave this idea of feeling of isolation. And that was one tip that Steven gave me that I really, really followed, and went, I need to find a house that feels like the character, that feels separated from the rest of the world, so that Celie can't easily escape. There's nobody that can come find her and help her.
And again, that was the reason we have like bright sunshine outside. And you see outside, if you look at the picture from the house, that is not a blue screen out there. That's a painted background, a painted backdrop. And you just, the good part of that, you can expose it so it just feels like just before it's burning out.
You see it here in a really nice way here. This just enough there. Let me ask you, Dan, my DIT, we shared the same DIT, Nick K, and he told me, and Nick said to me, because I was like, I'm a big fan of Dan, so I was like, yo, how's he like? Talk to me. I wanted to sneak into your set while we were doing Black Adam.
Of course, yes.
But he said Dan really likes, which you spoke to this even in that exterior, big units far away. Talk to me about that and what that means to you in terms of the way the light is. Obviously, is it because the sun is a million miles away and you're trying to replicate the sort of fall off of what happens? Talk to me a little bit about that if you could.
No, it's a lot of light. There's 110K. It's all the way back to the backdrop. And it's just for one person. So I'm doing that, trying to 110K is for one actor. So, there's a lot of cross lighting in there. So it's a lot of units coming in and hitting them. So that is like one light for each person. And of course, it's a little bit tricky here because we got so much COVID, so we have to come back to the scene and do it 4 or 5 times. It was driving everybody crazy, and especially Blitz, of course, because the performance have to match, but the light have to match as well. But all lights here is outside the windows, and it's like big units, is normally 20Ks or T12. But I just like to have the lights as far away as possible, because then exposure for me looks more correct. It's not falling off so fast. So if the light is close to you, the longer the way, as you can see on the sun, it's not changing too much. But unfortunately, we cannot make the sun. But I'm just saying that's the reason I like to have the lights so far away as possible, because the way the key light is fading away is very, very little comparing to if you just have it like inside on whatever. So we don't have any lights inside here. We have a little bit of some of the ladies, a small Kino flow or whatever, but otherwise it's bounce light. You see it's bouncing down from the table up to the faces. And then we have some contrast lights on the wall behind them, just to point them out. But that's another separate light.
You know what I really appreciated, Dan, about this is everybody has their own sort of unique type of light. Some have some hard light hitting them, some have the hot spot on their chest, some have indirect light. It's just it's like there's character
Yeah.
to each one of the frames in terms of the light. There's no like one thing lighting everybody the same kind of way.
And it's natural. It's natural.
And totally, yeah. If I feel the light has energy.
And that's the beauty, you know, again, of Dan's work. I mean, like the way the light comes, it's just natural, soft light. You know what I mean? It's what they call it, sfumato. Is what they call it. You know, like that's that Da Vinci shit. You know, where it's like there's never, everything just feels like it's landing almost biblically. Which I know it's not a freaking word, like when it comes to cinema, but it just feels epic and biblical. And like when you look at a scene like this, you know, it's like the Last Supper. You know what I mean? It's like that's the kind of, you know, that's where my mind goes. Like when you're creating these kinds of frames, because you're gonna get exactly the same kind of drama.
Well, it's also, this is such a pivotal scene in the movie in terms of just, you know, Celie finding agency, pushing back at Mister, and like you say, the men and sort of the women taking some power back. And this is actually one of my favorite frames, and the lighting on Louis Gossett Jr. here. Like, to me, this is just like, there's like the way it hits. Yeah.
But you know, that's a big wide shot in this, you know, and that's just, the light is just hitting the top of his face, and the rest is like fading down. But that's, again, I think it's a 20K far away, so you can actually control the shadows very precise. But you cannot do all this beauty stuff as cinematography if you don't have the support from the director. I'm not saying that because Blitz is there, but I'm just saying you cannot do that as a cinematographer if you don't have the same approach and the same opinion and feeling about how it should look like. You know, and that is like, you have to have your support from the director, and you have to support the director as a cinematographer. For sure. It's like, I think that's a very strong triangle there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and all the parties have to Dan, you have to care deeply about the acting more than the lighting, and Blitz has to care about the lighting as much as you can. It's like it when everyone cares about each other's work, it then you create some.
We always used to just say, you know, we're all making the same movie, and that part, you know, is very understated. You know, I'm fairly new to this. Dan's been in this much longer than I. And so it was also great to learn that, you know, what happens when there's harmony, you know, because, you know, ultimately, what am I? I'm just a conductor, right, of a very large orchestra. Like that's, you know, and it's nothing but first chairs, you know? So everyone's a master of their craft. And it's also understanding how do you allow the actors, knowing that they have spent the last 2 years since they got cast, figuring out every nuance of this character. There's no world I'll ever know every choice about this character. That's not my job. You know, the same way ever since Dan came on this job, his mind's been going. Sometimes Dan will call me late at night. Blitz, I don't think this shot's gonna work. And I go, wait. We're not even talking about this shot. Like, we don't shoot this shot for another month, you know? But then, because he's looking at it from that particular lens. And one great example was the giant gramophone, you know?
Well, let's talk about that scene. Let's play that right here, because I think this one's also a really special piece of design and coordination of ideas, because it's
But this one here again, this shot here, that's a 20K far away outside. That's the reason it's falling off so nicely. You know, see that again, it's just bouncing on her face. It's coming from the floor because it's so bright, you know, the key light. So that is like just bouncing around to her face again. But it's because the light is so far away, as far away it can go.
And this is, you were speaking to this before, Blitz, about, well, the music starts here, and then it goes in and makes the transition into
absolutely
fantasy.
Which again, I mean, this is all in, you know, it's also like a very understated part of all of it is also timing. You know, like this whole film is about timing. Like, you know, how many bars, you know, is it going to take to have enough of the music play in this environment? When do you transition? Like, what's the right way to transition, right, into these, you know, tableaus that are going to become Celie's headspace, right? And so, you know, knowing that we had this opportunity to get tighter, you know, and also sound design plays a phenomenal job here, because we had this low tone that was always playing when we were about to go there. can hold on this shot for 1 second. Pause right here.
Yeah, sure can.
I want to
Yeah.
talk about this because this, again, is where you go when you hire a master, to work with you on a film like this. Like, this is where it pays off. Because when I got the idea, first of all, the Giant Gramophone was not in the script when I got it. I just knew that I needed moments of incredible imagination that will become Seeley's headspace, And I also knew that we were going to be compared to Steven's film, which was, specifically rural and in it and kind of more earth tony in its overall texture. So I knew that we were going to need some sleeker images that would clearly contrast any version of The Color Purple that's ever existed. So that would require us to go places that Steven never went. One is, in an environment like this, or even in places like Memphis or the city, where Dan and I then now could sculpt what a sleeker look could be, right? And then we can balance that with the warm light Dan is talking about, that's the warm southern light, so we can have that contrast. So this was something I had sketched very early. I was like, okay, I need Seeley to go to a place. I drew this crazy gramophone, I put her on it, and then I went, okay, well, let me try to create an animatic around it. So I did all that work. But what I hadn't talked about was where the light was going to come from. And I remember every time Dan and I would either watch the animatic or talk about the scene, he'll go, ugh, I don't understand it. I don't understand what's happening. I'll go, Dan, come on. It's cool. It's somebody on a giant gramophone. It'll look amazing. Just forget, And then one day Dan comes up and goes, it's the light. Where's the light coming from? And I went, oh shit, I didn't think of that. It's not my job to think of where the light's coming from. So I think, but the beauty of what Dan does here is juxtapose this window with the window that we're seeing in real life, right? So there's a motif that's playing, which now all of a sudden, the emotional connection to the audience, you've given them an access point where they can understand what's happening, And again, that's why I always go, again, the director's the conductor. You'll never understand or know the intricacies of that cello, but when you get a master cellist, they tell you, no, this is where that arpeggio's got to go. And that's what happened in this moment, is that Dan, just by Dan going, that's the source of the light, all of a sudden now it all made sense. This crazy imaginative world now became grounded.
Yeah, and again, for a long time there was just in the limbo land, it was just shooting it against black, there should be like some top light, and then that was my struggling, I couldn't figure out. I think we have to be a contrast color. Again, as we talked a lot about in the movie, we like those contrast colors like steel blue and warm lights. And then I just got that crazy idea about making this, cut a hole in the duvetine and put a mold beam 20K out there and put some pieces of wood so it looks like a window, so it's matching to the set. But again, it was like the contrast color. I think that was very, very strong as well here. And that was my struggling. I couldn't see that in the beginning. And sometimes I cannot do something I cannot see. That was my problem with that scene here until we was cracking it. It was really good.
And I also have to shout out Paul Asterberry here, because my goodness, the physical construction of this giant gramophone, it is masterful work. The grooves of that gramophone are all cut in. Okay, that label, the giant label that says Sugar Avery, it's truly printed. Like, this was not like some green screen stuff. Yes, we do have VFX helped us out with the horn of the gramophone, because we couldn't.
Yeah, of course.
Reconstruct that, but the needle's real.
Yeah.
And again, when I talk about the believability of the actor, and when they're in it, Fantasia, who's playing Seeley, is truly on a spinning gramophone. She can feel every groove when she moves. She's not imagining this. She is living it, and that's the difference, I believe, when it comes to, just incredible performances. For me, like, I think that she and Taraji really being in that, tub, and the bubbles and, all that stuff. There's believability. And so again, just an incredible combination, as you said, of photography, production design, costume work, and choreography. That's what you're getting here.
I love this frame and the height of the camera here, because you really felt the three-dimensional aspect of this real set, this physical set on this lens here.
We are a Technocrane.
Yeah, and just like the slightly longer lens head to toe, where you can feel you feel like the width of the record, and you're like, oh yeah, that feels right, and then you feel the groove, you see the grooves and all that. It's very cool. And this is funny, because when I saw this, I thought, I hadn't seen the Broadway play, but I thought, oh, in a way, when they have double moving, they'll have, like you see it in Hamilton and other plays like that. I thought, oh wow, maybe this was, but the fact that it didn't even exist in the script, nor was from the actual play, I thought, oh, this might be the one thing that might have been in the play. I guess if they revive it again, they'll put this in here, because it would work really well on Broadway. Yeah, it would work great on a Broadway stage. Yeah, for sure. It's a very cool. It was a very cool scene for sure. Dan, tell me just what was besides the challenges, what was the thing that surprised you most about making this film, and what were maybe there were personal challenges that you overcame, or?
No, I think the whole thing about shooting the swamp, that was like, in the beginning, that was a really big deal, because the problem with those, it's easy to sit here and talk about, we just need some big cranes, but it's like very, very, very expensive. And, it's not like everybody say, yeah, of course you can have 300, 250 feet cranes. Go ahead, go. That whole discussions about how do you want to spend the production's money. That's the way it is. You have to talk about, because, where do you want to spend the money correctly? But stuff like that, you cannot shoot. If we didn't have those gigantic cranes, we will not be able to make that scene. It was going to be a lot of things were going to be done in post. And that's, again, that's where you need the director to support you as a cinematographer, because, you cannot carrying all that on your own shoulders. You have to be a part of, the directors have to support you and support the look. And that is very, very expensive. And you just have to, the problem is you have to know what you're doing, because you cannot move them. When the crane is there, they're not moving. So, you just have to be, I think it should be there somewhere. And, that is a big challenge, because it's a big thing to put up. And, you have to drive the lights down from Canada and all that. That was a big thing. And again, Blitz was fantastic, because of course we want to do it this way. But I think the whole, as Blitz is saying, movie making is teamwork. It's not only me, my gaffer, my key grip, my whole camera team, and production designer, and hair and makeup, it's everybody. And of course the director coming in on top of everything. But I think it's teamwork, and I love that. It's like movie making is like that. Nobody can do anything alone.
Well, and it's that's a major major motion picture moment. It's there are a handful of scenes where you have to deliver the major motion picture moment.
Say this, because this is also just kudos to Dan, because I hadn't done this before, and so there was no trust. Like it was like the studio could go, yeah, like when Blitz did that major motion picture, 5 years ago, and he did this massive, yeah, it's going to work out. So, you also have to remember that these were fights. These were, we had to be brave without even knowing if these things would fully work out, and I think that there were things that Dan and I had agreed very early that we were not going to compromise on. And no matter how many times they came to us and said, oh, no, we can't do this, we said, nope, we are doing it. And I think that, Dan always will say, are we shooting a schedule, or are we making a movie? And that, of course, at the time, I was so new, I didn't understand what he was saying, and as time went on the production, I came to understand that no one's going to thank you for making your days. As a matter of fact, no one's going to give a shit. Okay, like that, that you made your days, but you had a shitty movie. Like no one's gonna care. What they're gonna care about are these moments that are painstakingly crafted, that we do not compromise on, and our job is to get it right. And sometimes, and I'm not saying this all the time, but sometimes there's a divergence around those who are the non-artistic wing of this endeavor and those who are the artistic wing. And as a director, one thing I've learned coming out of all of this is how important it is that, first of all, your whole team is in alignment on what is important here, and when those lights go off and people sit in that theater and you hear them cheer or you hear them cry or you hear them laugh, all that painstaking work was worth it. All those battles around, are you going to get one crane or two cranes? Or and the things that Dan and I were like, no, we are not going to compromise. Shugavi coming to town, when that crowd, I remember they wanted to give me a fifth of my dancers to do that. And now when I see people's reaction in the theater, I go, boy, am I glad that we did not compromise.
Yeah, but another thing about those cranes, it's very fast to shoot that way. But you have if those three cranes are up, turning around, we are never waiting for lights to turn around, because it's just switching on and off. It's really, really fast. And I think that is the beauty of it. You don't have to move stuff around when you're shooting. It's just and of course that helps the director a lot to make the shooting days faster.
It's like pre-lighting.
Yeah, and you just switch one light off and you're ready, and it's really, really fast to turn around. And that was you're turning the light faster when you're turning the camera around. It's pretty amazing.
I was like, director friend of mine always says, as a director, you're both the pauper and the king. You're begging, and then you're also the person who gets to sort of all the time, on the same day, in the same hour, exactly. You were constantly playing that thing. But you're right. It's like, how do you use those resources and where do they really matter? Because of course, every movie, even the biggest budgets, have limitations.
Of course, you have to keep the budget, of course, but it's just sometimes, and that's great. Our relationships, Blitz and me, was we were so agree about how the movie should look, so we have a very clear idea of how are we going to make this, and that was fantastic.
Let's talk about one more scene if you guys have the time, just because I love when you guys get into it.
Oh, yeah.
This is a joyous scene where we're sort of, Celie and Sophia and everyone, they're now sort of gaining back their agency and all the rest. And talk to me a little about this set, the dress shop and all that. So talk to me of the pants shop.
Oh, this was like a challenge logistically, because the store was supposed to be the same store that is the general store when we begin, when Celie.
Right.
So there are obvious limitations in terms of scale, in terms of what you can and cannot do, because we've seen this store already, And so that was the first thing. And again, big up to Paul, who had, the foresight to go, okay, well, if this thing is going to become this, let's work our way backwards, right? What are the things that you're going to need, Blitz, for dancers, for this, for that? So that's how we created that second tier upstairs where the dancers can break out, but we're using it as storage when it's a store. But Dan, you can take it.
Yeah, again, we want to have this the southern light blowing in from the windows, and again, a lot of the girls are silhouetted most of the time. So we have no lights in the set at all. So that's outside again is Raptors. And if you're going back, you can see this is silhouette, and we have a little bit of light from the right here. But if you're going back to the scene from the beginning, so here you see the key light is coming from the other side now. And I just do that all the time. I just changing the key lights, so I think it's right for the actors and for the scene. But here we have a big issues because we are shooting towards the windows and we are shooting away from the windows, and we are shooting everything on the crane, or most of that. We did a fair amount of steady cam as well.
It was a lot of steady cam work.
But when we're turning around, we have the windows behind us.
I always think of, I think one of the things I saw from the challenge was when you're in, the only source is that window side. So you basically only have that one side to, you don't have windows on the sides and.
No, I have one window here, and then I have the window to the left here. That is.
Got it.
But I'm just changing the key lights from outside, from right to left when we are turning around to avoid the camera shadow.
Understood.
You see, now the light is coming from the right, and here's coming from the right too. So that's a big cheat.
But now we're in that second story.
See that the shadows are coming.
Yeah, of course.
The light is coming from the right here as well, and it shoots. But of course, you cannot be there. But again, it was like trying to avoid. I think this is a crane shot, wasn't it, Blitz?
Yeah, it was all crane. Yep.
So we have this gigantic crane coming in and make a lot of shadows, and that was the reason we changed the key light to the right to avoid the camera shadows.
Of course. Yeah. But talk to me, Blitz, about, because obviously, like in a shot like this, we are dealing with mostly silhouetted. I mean, I love it. It's beautiful in the way that we're.
But it's silhouette, and then I just have the key light from the right instead right now, because I think that works now.
What are you keying there from?
I think we have a vortex there.
Got it.
But I think we took some of the walls away. There's a big shelf to the right, and on top of that we took a wall away for this scene here. But when we are coming around later on, we just make this one here.
Yeah, which is now night.
Now it's going into night, and we didn't want to have the light from above. A lot of the light is coming, stop there, please. If you see, the light is coming from the right here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the light is changing a lot because we want to have this like in, a little bit less realistic light. And there was no space to have, we have ceilings on it, we have a full wall. And there was no way to put the light in. So we got this crazy idea about, let's take the wall away. The whole right side of the frame is a wall. We took that away. So when we shot it, there was no wall there. And we have a bank of vortexes out there. We can control the color palette and the lights. If you play it now, see that all this light is coming. So that wall to the right.
Yep.
You see all the lights coming from camera right.
Yeah, sure.
The reason it can come there is because there's no wall. So we just put the wall in post.
Did you consider at all of going, well, I'll go to some sort of big top source? Like even if I bring it down low? No.
No.
Also, because you were on wide lenses where you could see a lot of the sort of top anyway.
Yeah, we didn't want to have that look.
Yeah.
We want to have the side line. Everybody thought I was crazy for saying it.
Let me say this though, because you were talking about these silhouetted shadows. I mean, that was another thing Dan and I agreed on very early. Like, we're not afraid of shadows, and we're not afraid of silhouettes, and we're not afraid of, there's this whole like school of thought where you got to see everything, you got to see everybody's face, and everybody's got to be lit, and that's just not how light works in reality. So even when you were talking, Lawrence, about the Easter dinner scene, right? We were just operating based on how we know light to work, not a phony way in which light works in cinema, right? We were just going, I remember my house was like this when I was growing up in Ghana. When my family sat to eat, it was not like nobody had a key light blasting in their faces. The light came out the window, and some people, and so again, when you think about how light works, we just had to be confident in that look, because every now and then, Dan knows this, I got a whisper in my ear by somebody saying, hey, we can't see blah blah blah's face, and my job was to go, well guys, that's the look, that's the movie we're making, and by the way, that's the movie we've been making for the last 2 months, so too late. But I will say this too, which, I'm sure you're going to have some film students listening to this. So,
yeah.
It's important. When I got the schedule very early for my first AD, Mark Little, who did a fantastic job with us, I remember calling him back and saying, listen, you're going to get me fired because I can't start here. I can't start with, with some of these shots you're seeing right now, interior shots, the way Dan and I knew that the movie needed to look, we knew that we couldn't start there because some people will just not be able to see, they will miscategorize my whole film as this look. And so I remember calling him back and going, listen, what you're going to do is you're going to take us down to Savannah first. We're going to do these big dance. I know Fatima Robinson is going to have to speed up the process of choreography, but we're going to start with these big dance numbers. We're going to blow their mind. We're going to shoot the beaches. We're going to do all this amazing stuff so they can leave us alone to make the movie we want to make.
But by the way, that's like a 20-year veteran move that you recognize that right away.
Well, I figured it out on day one. Because Dan and I had talked about the movie in such deep detail and intricacies that I knew that we were going to, and this is what happened. After 5 days of dailies, man, like they stopped watching them. They were like, these guys are doing amazing. Let them make their movie. And I think that that's something that young film students should also know and understand. You're in survival mode when you start off. People are going, oh my goodness, we coughed up all this money for these people. We don't know what they're gonna do. Are they gonna succeed? It's all anxiety. And you should be able to understand that and mitigate that. You should be able to go get them what they want to see.
Yeah.
Let me get them excited, And once they're excited, man, Dan and I were in there shooting whatever we wanted, never got one phone. And Dan used to be so surprised and say, Blitz, they're not coming down on you. Like nobody's showing up. Like we never got, called to the principal's office. It never happened.
But that's because the studio trusts you because you did a really good movie, But you're right about that. It's just you have to shoot some cool stuff.
Well, I think it's also the same thing you're doing when you're making sort of a pact with the audience, which is, do I trust this person to carry me on this journey? And that's where those early scenes and the early shots and the tone and where they go, I got you. This guy knows exactly what he's doing. And now I can relax, as opposed to questioning everything. Like you deliver some shoddy dailies on days 1 and 2. Even the good ones, they'll start to be like, "But is this too?" It's
exactly.
Exactly. Like they see everything with a different lens once the trust isn't there, right? But if you take anything away from this, I think that's such a profound thing, Blitz, in the sense of how you schedule your movie, because everybody has their own paradigm. They have their own thing that they're trying to do. And you're like, well, I want to start well. I want to get off to a good start. And this is going to be something. And to take control of your own schedule and your own movie,
which is key.
Is really an important thing.
Let me also say this, and you said that in relation to the audience experience. Those opening shots, man, and Dan, we talked about it much earlier in this conversation. We were fastidious about making sure that this was mathematically, scientifically sound, because it was going to determine if the audience were going to trust or mistrust you, which is a very key. It's all about like what they say about like first impressions, right? It's exactly that. When you come in, the audience is doubtful of you. They're going, hey, I've never heard this guy's name. Shit, is he what they're saying he is or not? So those opening moments have to be bold swings, like the camera flying that high, and one thing I will say, which is another testament to our, the hard work we did. First day, first shot is in the movie. It is the shot where the girls run out to the beach and we boom up to the sky, right? That was the very first shot we ever shot together. I remember that day we were all like, oh my God, it was like the first day of school. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. And somehow that shot made it in the cut. And again, it tells you how, when you're prepared and ready for an opportunity this massive, but you've also scheduled well. And you know that you can deliver beauty in the early days. And then look, this movie oscillates between a lot of light and darkness. We knew that. It was also part of this moody way in which Dan, lit some moments. It was like, we were always going to be, so that when those moments of light, when you're around that tree and everybody's wearing white and they're holding hands around that tree, it's earned. Because you remember those darker, moodier moments and how much you were yearning for this moment, right? And so I'm really pleased with the outcome.
Well, you should be. You guys both did a wonderful job, and your whole team, as you've mentioned, all of them to a person. And it's a complex movie. It's a movie filled with challenges. I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it, because I've always appreciated Dan's work, and now you got a big fan in me for you, Blitz, and and I'm just excited to see what's next in both your worlds, and just everyone should go see this movie. I think it comes out Christmas. It does
Day.
definitely comes out Christmas in the States,
Yes.
and then
I
elsewhere.
think January elsewhere.
Yeah.
But we're so thrilled, so excited. We can't wait for you to see it.
Yeah, well, I love it. Like you said,
for
it's
sure.
a big swing, and I like big swings, and that's what we should all be taking, because it's a major motion picture, and you
Yeah.
should see it in the theaters.
Major motion
It is.
picture. All right.
All right, well, thank you guys
Thank you for
for
having
joining our Shot Talk.
Oh,
Thank you,
you
Dan.
very
Appreciate
much.
it.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Be
Thanks.
well, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right, you got it, everyone.
Bye.